Welcome to the At a Total Loss podcast, where real life lost moms talk about stillbirth, baby loss, grief, survival, and all things in between. I'm Catherine, a lost mom to my beautiful son Brody, who died at full term and was stillborn in January of 2022. I had no idea what to do after his death, and I thought the sadness was going to kill me. So I immediately reached out to other lost moms to try to find somebody who knew how I felt. And it was these conversations that saved me, and I hope that they can do the same for you. We talk about everything. I even interview support people and partners, people who have another perspective on what this life of loss is like. So here we are, you guys. Pull up a chair, maybe grab some tissues, shoot, maybe even a glass of wine, as we hash out what life looks like after the death of your baby and all the things that leave us at a total loss. Well, hello.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can.
Make sure it's the right. Nope, it's not.
There we go. Is that more
Oh yeah, you're crispy now.
profesh sounding?
Profesh.
Sometimes
yes.
it automatically does it, and sometimes it really doesn't.
Right. I know. It all, just when I think I've got it under control, something goes haywire. But
I know, but
props to you doing it well.
You hit record. That's the most important thing.
Have you ever had one where they didn't?
I don't think a podcast, but yeah, other things where it's like, are you supposed to be recording this?
That's so funny. I have to do it before because I just start talking and then I'm like, did I hit record or not? There's been a couple times where I had to pause it and then I didn't turn it back on. I'm like, I got this. Don't worry, everybody. But thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. So this is the kind of a first because typically I've known somebody for a while and then I just throw them on, but I don't know that much. So I'm excited to hear you talk and I'm kind of learning as well as we do this. So anyway, thank you so much for doing this. And what I love to do is I want to hear about Lauren and River and I want to hear your story. And so wherever you would like to start it, linearly, and that'll work up to where we are now. And anything that you want to share, I would love to hear.
And I'll talk about baby loss all day. So
yeah. So do you do that right now? Are you coaching mostly lost moms?
That's
and parents. Okay.
Yeah.
So you are having these conversations all the time?
Yep.
So at what point after loss were you able to do that?
I feel like I started, unofficially coaching people really soon after because I was pretty open about my loss and what had happened. And it just naturally evolved. If I heard of someone who had lost a baby, I would talk to them, or friends would say, my friend lost a baby. What do I do? Or can they reach out to you? Or can they talk to you? And so I had lots of phone conversations with, basically strangers who had been through stillbirth or miscarriage or the same things that I had been through. And yeah, it just kind of, again, evolved as my loss happened in 2013.
Okay.
So, my first loss, but yeah, I just kind of had always been like a helper person.
So were you a professional counselor before?
No, it was, okay. I was a professional mom. I kind of had always wanted to have a family and be a stay-at-home mom. And I had gone to college and actually graduated pregnant with my first daughter. And, had been staying home, but I had loved being a mom and I had 4 beautiful babies. And with not too many complications. And so when we were pregnant with our 5th baby, that was also really uncomplicated. There wasn't a whole lot to, I'd done
Lauren?
This. Yes, Lauren. And everything was fine. Everything was going good until probably lots of stories you've heard before. I just didn't feel her kicking. Just a few days before our due date, we were kind of in that zone. I was doing the baby laundry and I had the draft and my mom had flown into town to take care of my other kids. And we were nesting and had the car seat in the car and was just waiting for baby until I thought I had felt some contractions. In the evening, we'd like spent the day hiking, and I was like, this is going to hike that baby out,
Yeah.
just getting excited. And I felt some contractions, and I thought, this is it. Like, by morning, we're going to have a baby, and my kids are going to be so excited. And, but the contractions didn't really go anywhere. And I started feeling not really good, and recognized after I had rested, like, I don't think I felt her kick for a while. And we'd had that before with babies, where they're napping and you go in and they have this little buzzer thing that they put on your belly and wake the baby up. And so I wasn't overly concerned, because I think you don't think the worst. I mean, you kind of worry, but you don't really think what's happening is happening. But we went in and did find out that our baby did not have a heartbeat anymore. And so that was, 4 days before our due date.
So you were monitoring at home? You said you had a belly thing?
No, I just
Oh.
went in.
Oh, you went in. Okay, okay. And they said that everything was okay?
No, that's when they found out.
Oh,
I'm
that's when
saying
they found out.
in another
Okay.
pregnancy, we had gone in
Oh, okay.
because we were like,
Okay.
I don't think the baby's kicking. We went in and everything was
And
fine.
everything was fine. So when you went
Yes.
in thinking
But
everything's
this
going to be fine
time,
again.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this time it wasn't fine. And they kind of did that same thing where they do the handheld Doppler. There's no heartbeat. Then they do the in-office ultrasound. Like, my doctor had a little kind of laptop ultrasound, nothing. Then they still send you to the big ultrasound machine. And at that point, I mean, at 39 and a half weeks, if you can't find the heartbeat, like, you're not going to find the heartbeat. But yeah, I just remember it being really quiet. I think everybody's different, but for me, my reaction was just to go quiet and really think about my kids at home. I had 4 little girls, ages like 9 to 3.
Oh, wow.
Who were waiting for their little sister. And yeah, just thinking, how do you do this? How do you tell them? And what do you do? And so I think that, that whole part of parenting after loss is really something that I had to dive into and figure out and navigate all of that. So yeah, we did end up inducing labor at that point. I think that the medical people were a little bit in shock, just like we were.
Were
And they
they?
kind of just took me right back to labor and delivery. I didn't even go home and like get a toothbrush or talk to my kids or
Really?
yeah. And at the time, we just did what they said because we were in shock. And afterwards, I was like, I really could have gone home and like processed and packed a bag and talked to my kids, but yeah, they just took me back to get started on induction right away. And my husband had to go home and tell our kids. And
Oh, gosh.
yeah.
Had you entered into kind of a state of shock at this point? Or what was your head like?
Yeah,
Seems to have happened really quickly.
it's hard to say. I think it probably was shock. I think for me, what I went to immediately was, I had been induced for different reasons with 3 of my 4 deliveries. And I just kind of went into this mode of, okay, we got to do this. Now we're going to do this, just kind of, this is the next thing that I can do, that I need to do. And we're going to do the best we can with it. Because I had really been hoping to give birth kind of naturally, like labor at home, and then just head to the hospital at the end, and had this whole, vision in my mind of how it was going to go. And it wasn't that. So that was kind of, I guess, my way of coping, which again, everyone is different, but that's what it was for me. I think I just went into, okay, we're going to do this labor and delivery.
Did you ever find out what happened?
It was probably a placental abruption. There was blood like in the fluid when they broke my water. But yeah, I think that when I had thought I was feeling contractions, that might have been like an abruption happening. I don't really know. Nothing was really conclusive. We didn't do an autopsy. I didn't want to I didn't want to do that. And yeah, we think that, that she was perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Beautiful, like chubby cheeks, tons of dark hair, and, just the size she should have been, and everything looked fine.
She was, yeah. Oh,
Yeah. And so, yeah, we got to, luckily, I had a friend who had started helping in the hospital. We lived in a really small town and they didn't have a lot of like support services, but I had a friend who would come and like made hand molds and feet molds and help do pictures and all of
oh,
that.
wow.
So yeah, I was super grateful that she was there. And that's something that I'm able to do now that I do for other people. For the last few years, I've been volunteering, helping when people experience a stillbirth or a loss, go to the
Yeah,
hospital and help them.
that's awesome. Yeah, I was about to ask how the care was after and what was missing from that and if that kind of sparked something for you and what needed to happen.
Yeah, I think that overall, again, I think most of us were just in shock. Like my doctor, I know, took it really, really hard.
Really?
Um, he had done a great job. I had like an ultrasound every single week, except for the last couple weeks. He had like checked the placenta all the time. And it's just one of those things where I just, you can go either way and you could think this is a disaster, like everything went wrong, or you can choose to believe like this must have been the plan for her life.
Mm,
And I just choose to believe there was no way we could have stopped this,
mhm.
because you kind of go through all those what ifs and regrets and things that you wish you didn't do. And, could I have noticed sooner? Could I have been doing something different? And I just chose pretty early on to just decide, you know what? We were not supposed to save her. Like we weren't supposed to intervene,
Mm.
as hard as that is. And
Yeah.
everyone comes to their own place. But that's where I was able to come to, was just, this is, kind of what was meant to be for her life and for our lives, even though it was like absolutely 100% the most devastating, hardest
Yeah.
thing I've ever been through.
And I think this community will sometimes get angry over that concept, but I think there is something to be said about how their little lives, as short as they are, that they have still taught us, they have still done some beautiful things for us in the way that they had their little life. This is how it played out. And it's really inspiring that you think that way. And I think that's helpful, to think that way. I think we get buried in the coulda, shoulda, wouldas, and the regret can eat us alive. I think it's super hard to stay out of that, but to kind of say, this was the course that her life took, and there's nothing I could have done about it. And now, how am I going to move forward?
Yeah.
And can I ask you real quick? Did you ever have any? And I only ask this because it keeps coming up. Did you ever have any like weird intuition carrying Lauren?
Yeah. Well, that's funny you asked that. So, first, I'll say just really quick to address your other thought was, I think you get to choose what you think about your baby's life. That's
Mhm.
what I do when I coach my clients, is like it's really like empowering yourself to, choose the way you want to think and feel about what has happened to you. But I don't think other people need to tell you that it happened for a reason, or like anyone needs to be in anyone's business.
Mm-mm.
But you absolutely can choose, and you can absolutely also choose to like hate every bit of it. So
Yeah.
just owning it and having that feeling like you do have a choice of how you look at what's happened. But the funny thing is, my pregnancy before Lauren, we had a slight complication with like a bleed at 14 weeks, where um, I actually thought my water had broken, and it turned out to be blood that had like just rushed out, and it was really scary. And I just thought we lost this baby, and um, went to the doctor, and she was fine. And we watched it, and we healed, and we kind of did this modified bed rest thing. And, they tell you not to lift a milk jug or pick up your toddler, which is pretty hard when you're a mom.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, that whole pregnancy, I had worried about her. And there were just like so many little things where I just wasn't sure. Like, I just felt like maybe she wasn't going to make it.
Wow.
And we actually ended up naming her middle name Hope, because I was like, and I had really just had that, I had just worried about that. And then I realized after, when Lauren had passed, or maybe I thought something was going to happen to her even after she was born safe. Like, I just thought we might lose her.
Mhm.
And then it was Lauren who was, born right after her that who ended up
That's
passing.
wild.
Yeah, but in the moment, no. Like, there's
Yeah.
that whole, like, I remember right after Lauren died, I went to this kind of a conference at the university I went to, and it's kind of a religious, like, supposed to be like lots of inspiration, but I went to like every class they had on grief or like hard trials or anything, and this lady had talked about how she saved her baby because she had mother's intuition. Um,
Okay.
and it was her story, and it's fine. But I remember I was just 6 weeks after she died, and I was just looking for any hope. And I remember her talking about that and just thinking, yeah, and sometimes you just
Mm-mm.
nothing, I did not think anything was wrong until,
Yeah.
it was too late. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting it's an interesting thing where I had that feeling, but I thought it was my other daughter. And then to have it
Mhm.
happen, and to just be blindsided.
It's intuition
Yeah.
is so powerful. And I've heard of a lot of women who even had the feeling that this baby wasn't going to walk up the earth, like this just a weird feeling. And I think I've said this before in the podcast, so I've always liked to hear about that. I think our intuition is really strong, and like you said, just sometimes we're late. We know something's up, but by the time we get there, it's already too late to do anything. So that is definitely a thing. um, Talk to me about what your recovery was like, right after, and when did you start to kind of come up for air, is what I tend to say.
Yeah, I it definitely had, I mean, I'm very lucky that my postpartum experience is generally good. Like,
Hmm.
I was able to deliver the baby, like, no complications health-wise. I was fine. There was I don't know what the word is, the very difficult time when your milk comes in.
Oof.
And that was really, really hard because we had decided to just bury her on our own. Like, we didn't wait. I had her on a Thursday at like 3 in the morning, and Saturday, we were having a burial. And I remember not being able to hug anyone at that event just because, well,
Hmm. Hmm.
you don't realize how much breast tissue there is and how that milk comes in and just everything hurts and is so painful. And that was really, really, really hard because I love nursing my other babies. And so it was
Hmm.
just a really difficult time. Nobody offered that I could have like pumped and donated. That wasn't really an option. We lived kind of in the middle of nowhere, and nobody mentioned it. So I probably might have done that if I had the opportunity, but I didn't. So I just was trying to manage that. But I think I had what a lot of people have, which is that fog that sets in, and you're kind of going through the motions. And I'm getting out of bed because I've got these little girls who are grieving. My husband was able to stay home for a little while, but then he had to go back to work. My mom was there for a little while, then she had to go home. And
Hmm.
I just, I remember really just going through the motions and, yeah, just being in a fog. But I really do think that fog is a gift because I think it's like when you see parents in the news when there's been a tragedy and you say, how are they up there talking?
Yes.
It's like that trauma, that shock, that fog. It like you can do like,
Wild things in that
yes.
fog.
Yeah. And so that was how it was for me. But I really launched into, I'm like a learner. I love to learn. I love to read. I love to just figure stuff out. Like, I'm a DIY person. I love to do projects, and I'm just like really confident in my ability to research something and figure out the best way to do it and to do it. And so that's actually what I did with grief. And as weird as that might sound, but I got the books and I
Mm.
was reading the blogs. Now, this was 9 years ago. There was like a pretty good online community, like Facebook was a thing. Um, but yeah, it was a lot of blogs back then.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just reading and kind of connecting with people and just figuring out, how do I do this? How do I parent my grieving children? How do I, like, how long is it going to be like this? And what do I need to do to kind of do grief right? Even though there's not a right way, but that was kind of what I went into it with was, I see people in the world who have been through really tragic things. And the more you learn about people, the more you realize that tragedy is like very, very common, even in
Mm-hmm.
people we admire,
Mm-hmm. It's everywhere.
celebrities, like
Yeah.
history throughout history.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, okay, I've seen what they're doing. I've seen how they handled their grief, or like maybe you had no idea that this like former president lost 3 children or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Um, but I was like, I want to figure this out. And so that's kind of how my healing was. And I gave myself a lot of time. I know there's no magical year mark, but I
Mm-hmm.
remember just telling myself, I'm going to be sad for a year, and like, I'm not going to wear makeup, and I'm not going to do anything I don't want to do. And I'm just going to do the best I can. And I'm going to figure this out. And that was kind of what that time was like for me. But then we did end up getting pregnant again quite soon after
Mm.
Lauren. And so, in that first year of grief and trying to figure it out and navigate it all, I was pregnant again. And of course, the timelines ended up being very, very similar.
Mm.
So, she was born in March, and my rainbow baby was due in April.
Mm.
And so, there was a lot of deja vu happening,
Oh yeah.
a lot of like lining up of timelines, and it just, can easily say that was the hardest year of my life,
Oof.
for
Yeah.
sure. Just having had this textbook pregnancy right
Yeah.
up until the end, there just wasn't, I mean, I was just afraid the whole time.
Yeah.
So just trying to navigate that, and finding support. And I did have like a counselor that I talked to that, helped me just take a lot of deep breaths and try to
Good. Yeah.
calm, myself as I went through that, and finding pregnancy after loss, support groups online, and
Good. Yeah.
reading other stories, and just saying, okay, I'm not crazy. This is, all these
Yeah.
things are
And
pretty
that's
normal.
literally what it's about too. And I think a lot of people are hesitant to go to therapy or find support groups. No one's going to really make you feel better out in the first few months. But just knowing that you're not crazy, this is what grief feels like, this is what trauma feels like, this is what loss feels like, is one of the most important things. Because even when we do get into that grief, you're like, am I doing this right? Like, I feel okay today, is that all right? Am I allowed to do this? Or today I don't feel well at all, should I say no to this or say no to that? And should I be getting up and forcing myself to do certain things? So I think it's really important to seek out that sort of help, just to even mirror back what people are hearing you say, and just let you know you're not alone, and let you know that you're not insane. You're just grieving, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, and I think that's so important. And that's a huge thing that I learned. Like, when you learn about grief, a lot of times we hate it and we're like pushing it away, and we just like want it to just stop. Um, but if you bring it closer, if you learn about it, if you get to know it and
Mm.
even love it, um, then yeah, all that judgment, because there's the grief. This is something that I share a lot, is there's like something called clean pain, which is your baby died. Like, you've gone through this thing that's really sad. We want to be sad when our baby dies. That's natural. That's normal. If you're pregnant after loss, you're probably going to be scared. That's exactly what your brain is supposed to do. It's like trying to protect you, right? But then there's like this dirty pain, which is we judge ourselves, or we think we're not grieving fast enough, or we're too sad, we're too happy, we're judging ourselves for wanting another baby, or all these layers and layers of things that we put on ourselves. That's the part that I think, if you can like learn to let go of that,
Mm.
and just let yourself grieve and let it be what it is.
Mhm.
It's just like, it's such an easier process. And that's something that, so after my rainbow baby, he was born alive and it was a beautiful thing. But we did go on to have another loss at 14 weeks, which is our baby River. And that was a miscarriage. I didn't know until I just went in, and same thing. No heartbeat on the Doppler, no heartbeat on the little ultrasound. No, they send me to the hospital, no heartbeat. And went through and had a D&C because I had wanted to find out. We didn't know the gender, we didn't know what had happened, and I thought I do want answers.
Mhm.
And so we decided that surgery was the best way to do it.
Mhm.
But during surgery, I ended up starting to hemorrhage and almost bled out, and kind of woke up just like in the movies, looking at the ceiling with the lights, and the doctor saying, Amy, you lost a lot of blood. We're taking you to the hospital. What they had told me would be like, a 20-minute in and out, ended up being 90 minutes of them trying to get me to stop bleeding.
Wow.
So that was physically very, very difficult
Mhm.
as a recovery. And then also emotionally, that loss, you can't compare stillbirth and miscarriage. Like, they're just different.
Mhm.
They're both hard in different ways. But I really blamed myself a lot for the choices I had made, and what I had done, because it ended up that the lab made a mistake and did not end up being able to test for anything.
Wait, what do you mean?
We waited and waited and waited for, I don't even know, 6 to 8 weeks, maybe longer, waiting for these test results, and just got a call from my doctor, and she was pretty upset, and she just said, I'm so sorry. They had like put the baby in some sort of solution that made it so they couldn't test.
Are you serious? Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah. And so, I mean, not to get too graphic, but I mean, I just had this vision of, my baby in this lab and whatever. They never gave me an option to have the baby back. They never offered cremation. They never said really what they do. So I just kind of assumed that, it goes with the medical waste. And so I had, I mean, this weight of, I did this to my baby, like
Mhm.
and I'm super good about it, but I'll just get emotional now.
Hey, this is the place to do it.
Yeah, I've
Please.
done a ton of
Yeah.
work on this, so
Yeah.
it's all good. But yeah, I blamed myself like really hard for all of that. Like, why didn't I choose to deliver, even though nobody told me I could have? Like, I was
Mhm.
14 weeks, I was right on that, edge of the first trimester. And yeah, just really wished I would have done different things, wished I would have
Mhm.
asked. But again, it's like, I knew I did the best I could.
Yeah.
I knew the same things, but I just really struggled with that for probably like 2.5 years
Yeah.
at least. Just really, and you wouldn't have known it on the outside.
Oh yeah.
Like, I'm just going along, doing my thing. Um, but yeah, I really was like punishing myself and not taking care of myself, and just kind of, it was like that where with Lauren dying, it was like a full on, like, really grieving. With River, it was like just this low level, always there pain, but it was that dirty pain. Like, it was
Mhm.
just, I was so mad. I was mad at God. I'm super like into my faith, and had found a lot of peace after Lauren died, and had felt people praying for us, and had felt really confirmed that she was where she needed to be, and she was still part of our family, and it was going to be fine. With River, I was just like, what was the point? Because of course, in a pregnancy after loss, you're just praying every day. Just let the baby live. That's like all I want. Just
Mhm.
alive. I don't care. Like,
Right. Yeah.
bare
Exactly.
minimum.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was tough. I was like, what's the point of praying? What's the point of anything?
I can see. Yeah. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of women feel that way. especially after multiple losses.
Yeah, well, you're like, okay, one, but when you hear two, and I know there's people that like are just
Absolutely.
so many losses, but yeah, you're kind of like, well, that isn't fair. I'm
So how
having,
did you recover from that sort of feeling? Or have you?
yes. So I actually, in that time is when I found my life coach. Um, her name is Jody Moore, and she started teaching about kind of like all these mindset tools and these things that it was like all the things I had learned throughout my life that, it just resonated with me, but it was like such a beautiful package, like the way that she would teach it and the things she would teach. And so I decided I want to do this. I think that coaching, so I went to a life coach training that is for like anybody that can coach on anything, but I just knew it has to be lost moms because they're just in my heart, and it's been such a huge part of my life, was helping and serving and doing things for lost families. But I decided I still have this stuff that I'm carrying from River, and how can I help my clients if I'm still, I need to kind of get this taken care of, clean it up. And I was ready. Like, I think there's no rush. Sometimes it takes 2.5 years and like a big thing going on in your life to be like, okay, I'm ready to let go of this. And so I actually hired another coach who she coaches widows actually. So she's like in the
Wow.
grief space.
Yeah.
But I loved her and I trusted her. And I just said, will you help me? Will you help me figure out all these things I'm blaming myself for with River? And kind of the things I just told you, those are the things I was like, I got to take care of this. So we did. It just took a few sessions with her, and she like helped me pull out all the things I was saying to myself, all the thoughts I kept repeating, even the ones like I didn't notice. And that's what I love about coaching is like sometimes you're just too close to it. You can't see
Yeah.
what's happening. But like a coach can, or a therapist, or whatever you choose to do. But yeah, she just pulled out all those thoughts and she just told me, you don't have to believe this about yourself anymore. And of course, I'm just like, the dam bursts, and you're just like, break
Yeah.
down and cry. And I'm like, I have permission to stop saying this to myself and stop thinking this and just like let it go and love myself in it. Right. I didn't do anything wrong because I was mad and because I was upset and because I hated that we don't know the gender. And then I hate that my son, who's, he just turned 5, will go to the cemetery and we have a plot for Lauren, and he'll say, "Where's River buried?" And I have to say, we didn't bury River, and I'm not going to go into like details of why, but like I can have peace around that now.
Yeah.
Right. And I can just say, yeah, that happened. I don't love it, but I'm not blaming myself anymore. And like, it's okay now. And I can talk about it, and I can, it usually does hit a little nerve still. It's
Of
still
course.
emotional.
And how long ago was River?
So River would be 6.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that was kind of a really beautiful moment for me. And to just be able to say, I want to show people, like whether they listen to my podcast or whether I work with them or whatever, I just want to show people like you can be so mad and so sad and just be so mean to yourself, and you can let it go. Right? When you're
It's
ready, when you
possible.
want
Yeah.
to. Yeah, it's totally possible to find peace with something you probably still wish didn't happen. Right? But peace is available if you want it. So,
How early are your clients from loss? Because I know that even in the conversations that I've been having, a lot of those who I call it in the trenches, the first 3 months or so after, where you're kind of like, what side is up and what's happening? A lot of them say, I don't want to move forward. I don't want to get better because that brings me further from them, which sounds crazy, but it's not. It's 100% how you feel. You don't want to get better because you leave your grief behind, and that essentially means leaving your baby behind. This is the mentality. So, how early are your clients from loss, and those that are resistant to even any sort of self-help? It's just not time for them. Is that what you would say? They're not ready
Yeah.
for
Well,
it?
and I
Yeah.
think that's something where I would always offer my help. I've had people call me like or talk to me between like their baby died and they have not even buried the baby yet.
Mm.
I've also had people who are like 12 years later and still
Mm.
cannot bring themselves to look at the lab report of like they do have an answer. It's in a folder somewhere and they're like, they just don't want to look at it. Right.
Wow. Wow.
Um, so but it's kind of a self-selection. Like if you want to stay, if what I teach isn't for you, then it isn't for you. But I think, and I kind of had that question too when I started. I was like, well, would people in the trenches in that part, is coaching right for them or would therapy be better or whatever? And then I just decided, you know what? If what I'm saying resonates with you, if like my energy, what I teach, if that resonates with you, then come and talk to me and
Yeah.
see. Because like I said, I have talked to many people. And as a volunteer now, I go into hospitals on the day, and I offer what I can offer there in that full shock. A lot of times the moms are physically still like they're not all there. So I just offer what I can. But I
Mm.
think there's always value in having someone who understands, who will listen to you and do exactly what you just said, is like validate that you're not crazy, that it's okay to feel this way, that you're
Mhm.
not messing this up, that you can't mess this up, right? Because grief is messy and grief is unique. Each one of us has a different story, but there's also a lot of similarities, but you feel so isolated, you feel so alone. And so just having someone to say, yeah, this is totally normal,
Mhm.
what you're feeling and what you're thinking, it's normal.
Yeah.
And then also offer like places where maybe you could, again, take those layers of pain off and just deal with the grief, and figure out what you want to do, because there also are a lot of voices, right? We
Oh
have the
gosh,
people
yeah.
around us, we have
Ugh.
their judgments, their thoughts, how they think you should be grieving, and it can be hard to navigate. So I think having someone on your team that's just like, no, it's okay, like you can do it your way,
Mhm.
and
It's very
you
important.
you
Yeah.
can love those people and also just like really disagree with what they're saying to you.
Yeah. And I think it's important too, like you said, to have somebody validate how you're feeling, but also somebody who kind of understands. So when you sit in a chair, you don't necessarily want to hash out every single thing that happened over and over and over again. But just looking at you, you could say, you don't have to say a word. I know how you feel. It's happened to me too. Obviously, they can express anything that they would like to say, but trying to express to somebody who's never lost their baby is so hard to give them the magnitude, to translate the magnitude of the loss, the heaviness of the grief. So being able to say it to another lost mom, they can probably leave a lot of that out because you're like, I understand, I get it. Let's talk about where we're at now. Um, I have a question about, as a professional, we're all in this space, and it's a very safe space, we like to say. And we all say, grieve however you need to grieve. Has there ever been a situation or been situations where you feel personally that this isn't a healthy way of grieving? I need to intervene here and say, I need to suggest that you consider another way of doing this. Maybe it's spiraling into darkness with no attempt for any hope after a long period of time, or something that you've seen professionally. Have you ever had to say the way that you're grieving is not healthy, even if it's the flip? Maybe they're very happy, maybe they're always consistently okay. Have you ever had to say, yes, we choose to grieve however we need to grieve, we're all individuals, but I fear the way that you're doing it is unhealthy? Has that ever happened?
Yeah, I think it's important to definitely differentiate, like me as a coach, right? Like I have a different skill set. I have a lot of mental health tools, but there's tools that I don't have. So that's something I'm really careful about is like I make sure I have contact info and an emergency contact. So if someone, because there's a difference, I think there's like a lot of lost moms feel like I wish I could go to sleep and just go be where my baby is and
Absolutely, yeah.
not feel this pain anymore.
Mhm.
Right. And I think
Sadly.
it's like, okay, you can normalize that because that is normal. And sometimes it really freaks people out. But then if there's someone who's like making a plan,
Oh
who
gosh,
really
yeah.
does not want to be, then I would say, yeah, I need to know, um, I need your address. I need an emergency contact. I need to be able to say, like, I can get you help, especially as you know, the internet is great and it's beautiful, but we need to have like boots on the ground if someone is really struggling.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I'm glad that in the law space there is a lot of like, I think we've really destigmatized needing therapy or having a coach or whatever it is. But yeah, I think what we say is, there's a doctor and then there's a trainer. So if you're like not functional, if you are really depressed and like you're not able to get out of bed, you're not handling life well, um, even in grief, like more than just, I guess, regular grief, whatever, quote
Yeah,
unquote, like
yeah.
what you would expect for a grieving person, then you probably should be seeing a doctor, right? You should be seeing a therapist, or you might need medication or something more. But
Mhm.
if you feel like you're functioning, then a coach or like a trainer would be able to get you. So it's like a doctor can get you to baseline health, right? And then a coach can take you to where you want to be.
Mm.
And so I'm very cognizant of that and definitely keeping tabs on my clients. But mine have all been, amazing. And some of them are like they have therapy and they have a coach. And a lot of times they'll compartmentalize and say, I really need to talk to someone who gets baby loss. And I'm going to deal with my like, regular anxiety and other things that I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
Yeah, over here with my therapist that I feel comfortable with. So I think it is just building that team,
Mhm.
um, and knowing yourself. And yeah, I think I really try to be aware of like what's healthy, what's not, what I can help with,
Yeah.
and what might need more help because there are so many options, but want to make sure that everyone's taken care of the way they need to be.
That's so responsible of you because you're right. There is a difference sometimes between grief and actual diagnosed anxiety, depression disorders that could have been maybe not present before, but have uprooted now. And to understand that there's a difference between your simple cut and dry grief and then it could be escalated by some other issues that are going on, but that's not your jurisdiction to kind of
Yeah.
say we need to make sure health wise you're good before we start to say anything about treating this grief or moving forward or anything like that. I think that's really responsible. Has that ever happened where you are kind of like, well, I guess I assume so since you have the experience, but you kind of look at someone and say this isn't your typical textbook grief, there's something more going on here?
For me, most of my clients have been
Yeah.
amazing and we've just
Hmm.
been able to do so much good work together. I have had a few cases where I've had to say, like, you aren't getting out of bed. Like, how often is that happening? And do you feel like you need some help there? But
Mm, mm.
overall, like I said, most of my clients have just been, working together has been amazingly helpful for them and they've made so much progress. Um, and it's just been like really beautiful to watch.
So, what do you recommend for somebody who is pretty fresh from loss, who does not want to get up, but they want to get up, but they can't seem to get up? That sort of situation where they would love to have the energy to get up or to get dressed, and they just feel like they're not allowed to, or they feel like they're doing their baby a disservice by trying to function closely after loss. How do you approach somebody who can't seem to get out of bed, but would like to try to get out of bed?
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing I would say is have so much compassion for yourself. A lot of times we think if I give myself permission to stay in bed all day, I will stay in bed forever, right? I will go into this deep, dark hole of grief and I'll never want to get up. But actually, the opposite of is true for most people, right? If you just stop judging yourself for wanting to stay in bed and eat chocolate all day and like binge watch Netflix, if you're just like, it's okay, this is what I'm going to do today. And you make it a choice, right? Because a lot of times we'll say, I can't get out of bed. And it's like, you could get out of bed. If your house was on fire, you would get up out of that bed, right?
Mhm.
But when you just say, this is a choice I'm making, this is how I need to take care of my grief today, I'm going to lay here as long as I need to. You might be surprised that like an hour or two later, maybe you're like, I could get up and eat something. Like I could get some sunshine on my face. I can do this, right? I can shower, right? And you just kind of make that, even that bare minimum thing that you need to do to take care of yourself, right? But if you don't want to shower that day, give yourself permission and just say, I choose not to shower. And, if it's going on for a really long time, that might be when you're wanting to get a little extra help or having someone come in and support you
Mhm.
to help you get in that water. But yeah, just have, I call it radical self compassion. Just love yourself, that part of you that just wants to stay in bed forever and not face what you're facing, right? Um, but then the flip side of how I would help someone is just to notice, how they're thinking about their relationship with their baby. Because that thought, if I get out of bed, if I heal, if I go back to work, if I laugh, then I'm disrespecting my baby or I'm losing connection, right? It's that fear of the loss of connection, right? That's a lie that our brain tells us. And it's not true and it feels really true. Um, and almost everyone who grieves feels it. It's very normal. They think that way, but it's not true. So it's okay for your relationship with your baby to evolve. And at the beginning, the grief and the love and your baby, they are like one,
Mm.
right? But if you can learn how to kind of navigate that and start to separate it a little bit, like I can love my baby and I can be happy. I can love my baby and I can go on a cruise or I can, there's people that I've heard of, a lot of people who had a trip planned or like a baby moon and then the baby dies and it's like, well, now do I do? Is it okay to do these things? And of course it's different, but it's like, yeah, can you say it's okay? Like it's okay to laugh again. It's okay to smile again. It's okay to go 5 minutes and not think about your baby. Because a lot of times you'll catch yourself doing that, right?
Mhm.
And then it's all the judgment, all the shame, and all this, oh my goodness, I can't believe that I didn't think about my baby for 5 minutes. Right. But it's okay. Like that's part of the grieving process. It's part of the healing process. And you absolutely can carry your baby with you and let go of the pain. You just can't see it at the beginning. Right. And that's again what I'm here to say is like, you can't see it, but I can see it for you. And if that's something you want, which I never tell my clients, like they don't have to do anything, they just get
Mhm.
to choose. But if it's like they're ready and they're at a place where they're like, I want to figure out how to parent my child without it being so wrapped up in this grief,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
then that is totally possible. And it's going to be like a roller coaster and it's trial and error and just figuring it out. But
Yeah.
you can do it
Yeah.
because that relationship is so strong, right? Like that love is so strong. And when you can tap into that, love yourself, love your baby, love your family, your support system, um,
Yeah.
then, it makes it doable.
Mhm. Yeah, and absolutely. And time I've found is such an interesting thing. I'm approaching 8 months from loss. And I remember in the trenches, I was like, I don't know what the hell's going on. Everyone leave me alone. I'll figure this out. I'm mad. I'm angry. I'm sad. I have no answers. Started to come up for air at that 3-month mark. Around week 10 to 12, I was finally able to take a breath. And you guys know what I mean when I say that, like okay, what do I have to do now? I started therapy pretty early, and I think there was this just one moment where it was like a light switch, and it was probably month 6 or so. And this was after some work, therapies and different types of counselings and listening to grief things and just trying to make sense, even though nothing made sense, of what my brain was doing, and realizing, like exactly like you said, what my relationship with Brody is. And it was like a light switch that I decided that I was not going to talk about his death. I wasn't going to say when Brody died. I wasn't going to say, who I was before his death. I wasn't going to start saying that. I was trying to say after he was born. And I was trying to flip my brain into saying, he's a beautiful thing that happened to me. Yes, his death is tragic and devastating, and I might not ever be fully over it. Never will I be over it. But his life is beautiful and is a gift to me. And I have to try to have that sort of relationship with him. But it took time. It took time. And like everyone says, time does not heal all wounds. Time just gives you the time that you need to learn how to carry your grief, to learn what your relationship with grief is, and to figure out how you want to carry it. And that's all it is, because it changes so much over the course. Right after loss, it looks so different than it does 8 months out, 8 years out. It's still there, but you just somehow through the course of time, figure out how you're going to carry it. And I'm not done figuring it out. Like, I'm still figuring it out, but I know right now in this moment, I have grief. I will always have it. But right now I'm getting a little bit more, and I'm doing air quotes, people, because you can't see me, comfortable in my grief and my relationship with it, because it's a symbol of my love for Brody. How am I doing? Do I sound normal?
Yes. No, I love it. It's funny because um on my podcast, whenever I have guests, I say, tell me about your baby's life.
Mm.
And I would say 99% of the people say, no one has ever asked me that. Right? Like, we talk about what happened and our losses and like all of that, kind of the after, like you said. But it's like, how do you shift that? Like, no one ever asks, what did you crave, or what did you, tell me about your baby's life. And
Mhm.
so I think that's beautiful what you said, and so good for people to understand and just to do it their own way. But yeah, it really is a process. And I do say that, grief, when the loss happens, it's like all your skin comes off your body, right? It's like everything is so raw, and everything is, you just like, you can't even imagine it not being painful. Right? And so that's another thing about grief, is to understand, like, it will always be there, but it will not always be the same, right? It will evolve and it will change. And so I think time gives us, that buffer or that separation where you can take a step back and look at it and have the capacity to maybe look at it differently. But I think for anyone who is in that super raw, just like all the nerves are exposed and everything is just awful, like diaper commercials are just,
oh my
like,
gosh,
you're down the
it's the worst. I used to say it feels like I'm wearing my skin inside out. I say that
Yes.
it's like it's so nervy. You're right. Those
Yeah.
dang commercials, they won't stop.
Yes. But yeah, it's like, just understand, like, it won't always be like that, because sometimes
No.
we do. That's like where the heaviness comes from, is we project how we're feeling now into the future and be like, I don't think I can do this for the rest of my life. But
That's the thing, it's too
yeah,
much.
it is. But the good thing is that's not most people's experience. Like, yes, we carry it, but it can change, and you can learn. Like, you can learn so much, and you can have all these tools that are available to you, right? Because there's people like you, people like me, so many people who are saying, I've been there, and here's what helped me, and maybe it'll help you too. And just have that hope that it's gonna be okay. Like it really will, and you will smile and you will laugh and you will do all the things, and you still have so much story, so much life ahead of you, and you can bring your baby. It just looks differently than you wanted it to. Like, and it's okay to be sad about that. But there is just so much hope.
I love that. That's such a wonderful, it's a beautiful word, hope. I think when we start to get into that hopeless space, that's where the darkness creeps in a little too much. But I want, as we're approaching the end of the hour, I really want you to give me some information on how your services work and how people can find you.
Yeah, so I have a podcast also. It's called Smooth Stones, and it's a picture of me with two balloons representing my babies. You can find it on all the platforms. That's a great place to start, and just to like, because it's mostly me just teaching tools and teaching things that I've learned that will help you, like how to say how many kids you have, or how to deal with jealousy, or and also lots of fun other topics, like we talked about intimacy and minimalism, and just I say all things life after loss. So it's with the grief lens on it, but it is not like all about grief. And then I have my website is smoothstonescoaching.com. You can reach out to me there. I've got like some free stuff there, and you can reach out to work with me. Right now I do mostly one-on-one coaching. I am on Instagram at amy.smoothstonescoaching, and I post a lot of good stuff there and everything that I have going on. I've got some stuff planned coming up for October. I'm going into Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, and also the holidays. I know that can be a really hard time for people, so I'm definitely going to be there to support people through that.
Thank you for everything that you're doing, Amy. This space really needs it. It really needs somebody to help us walk through it, to take this journey, because there's so many different milestones and so many different levels of the grief and the different waves. So thank you for everything that you're doing and the services that you're providing. And thank you for coming on and talking about your beautiful babies, Lauren and River. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to the audience and anybody who's listening on the important things that really matter in this grief process.
Yeah, thank you. I love what you're doing too. I think there's so much power in just sharing our stories so that we don't feel alone. So thank you.
It's so true. Yes. Thank you so much. And I'm going to link everything at the bottom of the description so that people can find all of the ways to connect with you. And so I hope you listening have found something in this conversation that's helpful, and reach out to Amy if you'd like some additional coaching or even just some resources to help you through this. So thank you again so much, Amy.
Yeah, anytime.
Whew, good stuff. So I hope you guys got something out of that episode, and it's so important that we all talk about this and stay very open about what's going on in the life of loss.